The Future of American Orchestras, a discussion of the problems and prospects facing American symphony orchestras, their music, and their audiences' expectations. This timely conversation examines trends and challenges facing youth, community, collegiate, and professional orchestras. In this segment, panelists respond to a question from the audience regarding programming.
From our audience, right now a lot of the same repertoire is being played. For instance, I think that Boston is playing Mahler 2 for the second time, I assume, this year. Mozart, Mahler, etc. are all great composers, but, quote, isn't the future of American orchestras supposed to be new programming? Another question is, how much of the decline of the symphony orchestra's popularity is due to the unwillingness of music directors to program music with popular appeal? If the buyer can't hear the tune, they won't buy a single ticket. And then a last one that says, how to deal with the boredom of hearing repetitive classical top 40 at each performance. Such is the diversity.
It's like my weekly mailbox.
In 1993, when the then American Symphony Orchestra League had its annual conference, it's now the League of American Orchestras, a gentleman got up to speak, and he spoke about programming. And I have a very good memory. Conductors are in the memory business. We're like elephants. And this gentleman said, it's very important for conductors, music directors everywhere, to stretch their audiences without breaking them. The speaker was Henry Fogel. If we played music that our subscribers and even single ticket buyers told us they wanted us to play, and limited to that, we would die. I'm sorry, we can't do just what you want to hear. It wouldn't work. Or what you think you want to hear. Thank you. And a really good example of that was actually in my first season here, I did a brand new piano concerto by an Anglo-American composer, Stephen Montague. And it was just, this piece was just wild as all get up. It's just crazy. I mean, just players behind the audience, just playing in different tempos. I mean, the audience knew that they were in for something special when the wonderful French-Canadian pianist, Louise Bissette, came out and she put gloves on her hands with the digits extended because she needed to be able to have the digits, but she also needed to be able to bang. Well, living in fear of this concert, of course, I had a number of people on the programming committee very concerned about doing this piece, anything new. I surrounded it with Ravel's Mother Goose Suite. It's very nice. And Rimsky-Korsakov's Scheherazade. Well, yeah, those pieces went well, but I'm telling you, nobody to this day remembers that we did Ravel and Rimsky-Korsakov on that program. They loved that they heard it. They loved that we finished the program with Rimsky-Korsakov. Just as this one great program I heard Riccardo Muti do in Philadelphia, where he had all this wild stuff, Stravinsky, Apollo, Bartok, two pianos, percussion, and then he ended with Bolero. So everybody was out skipping. They skipped, but they weren't talking about Bolero. They were talking about Bartok, and they were talking about Stravinsky, Apollo. And that's, people were stopping me on the street saying, wow, that piano concerto you did, that was just fantastic. So that's where we come in, because we know more repertoire than you'll ever know. But it's up to us to know which pieces and to not go too far.
What's really interesting in the cards that you read, if you think about, if you know the history of performance in this country, one of the pieces that people complain, oh my God, not again, the Mahler Second. Right. Excuse me, but if you were having this symposium 50 years ago, that would have been the dangerous new experimental piece. Almost never played in America, generally hated by critics and audiences as all of the Mahler symphonies, long, diffuse, and unmelodic, and so forth. And it's only because some conductors kept pushing that envelope, and then along came a guy named Bernstein, who really pushed that envelope in 1960, and Mahler is now, oh no, not the Mahler Second again. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. It is up to conductors to stretch the audience, not break them. I did say, as soon as you read the quote, I knew where that was headed. It's really interesting, though, even in small orchestras, that conductors can make it work by what they choose, and in some cases by actually breaking the concert hall etiquette and talking to the audience, which, of course, didn't used to happen at all and now does. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 1 year. David Delter Geyer, their music director, the theme for the season, a Pulitzer Prize-winning composition on every concert. Now, not only does that mean a modern piece, but I want to tell you they didn't give the Pulitzer Prize to 4-minute overtures. It was a significant, substantial 20th century piece on every concert. That season was sold out. He picked the pieces wisely, and he spent 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of the concert helping the audience, actually using musical examples with the orchestra on stage, not using musical jargon, the kind of lectures that you had to give to different levels. He figured most people won't know George Crumb's Ancient Voices of Children, which is one of them, but he had already developed the trust of the audience over the years that the season was sold out, as most of their seasons have been, and was a big hit. So you can, and in fact, I studied orchestra programs around America, and I would say it is not true that only the greatest hits are performed, nor is it true that all orchestras are pushing the envelope too far. There's a wide range, and the ones that are successful have found the balance that Edward talked about.
I just want to add that the way orchestras communicate to their public about their programs, as someone who is I did not grow up in the orchestra world. I came through the public school system after orchestras were a common part of the high school environment, whereas San Diego Youth Symphony was founded when every high school had an orchestra and we were the place where all the best kids were coming together. Professional orchestras are still promoting themselves by simply listing the pieces they're going to perform. So that practice has been going on for how long, Henry?
Many years.
1,600 years? I mean, 600 years, 1448? So I've been telling my colleagues in San Diego that are complaining, oh, we're not selling tickets. And I say, you know what? Ticket sales is like an indicator species in an ecosystem. The spotted owl in Northwest is not dying because someone's out hunting owls. It was dying because there was a loss of habitat, a loss of the environment for it. The same thing has happened in American orchestras. American orchestras aren't struggling with ticket sales because great music isn't being written. It's because those orchestras aren't connecting with their communities in a way, they aren't meeting their community where they are. At that time in Boston, the community was completely satisfied with just getting the dates and coming to the concert. That's not the way the world is anymore, and orchestras aren't figuring that out fast enough.
Yeah, but it's also more complicated because in those days in Boston, they gave far fewer concerts because they were underpaying their musicians. When you only need a smaller number of people to fill your concert hall, you don't have to market it. It's in the 60s and beyond when we began to say, you know what, these guys deserve a good living wage. Oh, well, 2 concerts a week in a 22-week season isn't going to do it anymore. We need to get more paid revenue, which means we actually need to sell our product to people who might not know what it is. And you're right, we still haven't figured out how to do that.
There's so many people that say that they do not like classical music, and yet they go to a football game or a baseball game and they hear, what, Liszt Hungarian Fantasy No. 2? Yeah, I like that. Are they Rossini, William Tell? I don't know the name of it, but I like that. It's amazing how many people don't like classical music and yet do.
Well, of course, there's a whole question of why pieces like that have now been relegated to pops concerts. And that's one of the things that I think is wrong with our field, is we've taken the lighter music that when it was written, there were actually no such thing as pops concerts. But you ask a serious conductor, why don't you do an Enesco-Romanian Rhapsody? No, that's for pops concerts. And what we've actually done is taken some of the fun out of concerts and made them all serious intellectual experiences. And fun is actually a part of the human experience too. And I'd love to see, and I wrote an article about 8 years ago in Symphony Magazine, urging that we start to bring some of that stuff back. because it was all the great famous conductors of history regularly included pieces like España and like that in their regular concerts. And now a lot of it is gone. And I think that helps to give us this stuffy image that we now are saying, gee, how do we get rid of that?
Before we move on, Aaron, I just want to say, your point basically is that the orchestra world separates itself. Yep. And so people love music, end of sentence. We as human beings love music. It's part of our brain's DNA, and however it gets defined ends up creating barriers quite often.
If you can join me in a round of applause for each member of our panel: David Cizak, Dalut, Edward, Janet, Henry. I think you guys did good. That was great.